In this video, we're going to be talking about how to escape HTML content. Let's look at this website we have here. It's just a basic user profile page. We've got the name, the Twitter, the GitHub. We're using HTML here, H1 for the user profile, and then we got some paragraph tags. And within the paragraph tags, we have spans, and each span has its own ID. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using JavaScript to select these parts of the page. And then we're going to have inside of these elements, we're going to be setting their inner HTMLs. For you security people, you probably know this is already a bad idea. We're going to set their inner HTML equal to the value that we get back to the server. Let's just make sure this works. So I'm just going to type in my name in here, save this real quick. We can see that on the right-hand side, we've got Ron Paris. It's appearing inside the span. Okay, that looks right. But we don't want to hard code this value. We want this to be coming from our back end. So here in our main.js, let's try selecting the name. So const name, I like to put a little $sign in front of things that are HTML elements. So document.query selector, and then we're going to use the query selector syntax to select the one with the ID name. And because I'm paranoid, I'm just going to go over here to console, load this up. Now I'm going to type $name. You can see we got all that name. So if we have $name and we set its inner HTML equal to name value, like Ron Paris, you can see it's appearing here on the page, which is what we want. So now we can see I've got these query selectors. They're selecting different parts of the DOM, and then I'm using inner HTML and setting them equal to various text strings. Inner HTML replaces the elements that are children of the current element with the contents that you provide. So you can actually put HTML in here. So let's say like I could put an H2 in here, and when I load it over here, you see now my name is H2 sized. Inner HTML allows you to replace the children of an element with the provided content, even if that provided content is HTML. The problem with this usage of inner HTML, as we're going to find out, is that when we're just typing these values in, we trust ourselves, hopefully, and we're just typing in strings. But what if an attacker could control the values that are being placed inside these inner HTMLs? So we've got a simple backend here, and if we make a request, so we can see that once we fetch the user, and then we get back a promise, and then we provide it with a callback function that accepts the response, and then we call the JSON method on that response object, and that returns a promise. And that promise, we're using console.log as a callback in order to log the value we get back. So here in the console, you can see that the object we're getting from the backend is an object with a name property, a Twitter property, and a GitHub property. Now, what we want to do is we want to pull these values out of here, and we want to place them into name, Twitter, and GitHub. So let's try doing that. Now if we load it, it looks the same. But now these values are actually coming from our backend. So what we want to do is go to our backend and see what happens if an attacker was to change the username into something malicious. So let's imagine that these values that are coming back from our backend that we're going to be using in the inner HTML context, let's imagine these were originally provided by our user. So imagine there's another page where the user was able to provide their username, their Twitter handle, and their GitHub, and our backend has like saved that in a database or something. We're going to see it here as a string, but just imagine that these values that are on the backend were provided by an attacker. You can see here localhost says attack. That's a script that's been inlined into our page because we're using inner HTML right here. So what's the right move? One thing you can do is you can escape this value, response.name. And what that means is you're going to be taking characters that have a special meaning in the context of inner HTML, and you're going to be replacing them with benign equivalent characters. The reason why this attack works is that this less than symbol is a special character in HTML that means open a tag. And then we're saying open an image tag. and then we're saying set the attribute to load this image from X. And that's not a valid URL, that's not a valid image URL, so it's gonna throw an error. And then we're setting up an event handler and we're saying, if there's an error, run this little piece of JavaScript that pops an alert box and says the word attack. And then it has the closing script / and then it has the greater than symbol. This content right here is being treated as code because it's being placed into the inner HTML attribute. The context of the inner HTML attribute is HTML. And so if you give it a valid HTML, it's going to get executed. So in order to make this benign, we need to use something called HTML entity escaping. So you could argue that like not all of these need to be escaped in every scenario, but if you want to be safe, these are the ones you should escape for HTML entity content values. Now we have them. And then what are we going to turn them into? We're going to turn them into the HTML entity equivalents. So the first one, the ampersand, that's just amp. The second one is going to be LT. So now we've got our escape table, and what we need to do here is take this mapping of values between possibly dangerous value and HTML entity escaped value. And for every character in response, we need to go through and replace every character if it matches any of these with its escaped entity equivalent. So we've got this attack, and it's successful because we were using inner HTML to put this attacker controlled data into our page. And what we've done here is we've defined this object that's a bunch of value pairs. It's just the entity we should be escaping, and then it's HTML entity equivalent that we want to replace it with. Let's wrap this guy in a function so that we can use it. Split so that we can get it as a set of characters. Let's see what that looks like. So we can see we have like the less than symbol, the I, the M, the G, the S. Okay, so this is all the characters, the attacker controlled name value. And then let's do a map and go through each one and apply our function to it, escape. See, you can see now we have, it's been escaped. We have the HTML entity, the quote, the hexadecimal x27, the quote. So we're getting these quoted values. So let's just turn that back into a string to join. Turn it back together. So now we have our escaped value as one long string. We have the less than, image, source X, on error, quote, alert. So this is benign. We can put this right into the inner HTML, and I don't think we're gonna end up with a successful attack. So the attack no longer succeeds. Instead, we just have this funny username. So the attacker supplied us with an injection attack, which was the image source X on error alert attack, and we successfully escaped that particular value and replaced it with these benign equivalent characters, and now there's no successful attack. So if we want to use this strategy, what we need to do is in every single place where we're going to be setting inner HTML, we have to replace the value with the same kind of stuff, with the split it, we have to escape it, and we have to never forget to do this, because if we do, then it's possible that some attacker can execute script contents in our page just by using some provided value. So now we got all kinds of defense going on. Lots of defensive code. Now let's just test it out. Let's go over here to our back end. And let's just try replacing these with spikes. So they're all escaped. So we're safe, right? That's the end of the story? Not exactly. This is actually not the preferred way of doing things. What you should do instead is you should never use inner HTML. It's good to know that escaping exists and how to apply escaping, but what you actually want to be doing is instead just focus on your intent, which is to set the text content of these. So rather than using inner HTML, let's just set it equal to text content. And now you can see that the value is truly just text. Now, no matter what the attacker provides us, it will never be treated as HTML and therefore never executed in the context of our page because we're going to be using the text content property.